Who do you want to bring to the table first as a riser?
I'm going to talk about the guy who has crushed the pre-draft process like nobody else in this class, and that is Shemar Stewart from Texas A&M. One, he was the best player in Mobile down at the Senior Bowl, and then he tested out as probably the most athletic player in the draft in Indianapolis as well. Trevor, he had a 98th percentile broad jump at 10 feet, 11 inches, 96th percentile vertical at 40 inches. He ran the 40-yard dash in 4.59 seconds despite being 6'5", 267 pounds, 34 1/8 inch for arm length as well. Trevor, they were throwing out Myles Garrett comparisons on the NFL Network broadcast. If you're anytime compared to Myles Garrett, you know you're doing something right because of just how freaky of an athlete both those guys are. Obviously, listen, the production at Texas A&M is not the best, right? A 67 pass rushing grade this past year, but you got to remember the Texas A&M defense, we talked about this plenty of times before, Nick Scorton, didn't really ask them to be truly unleashed as pass rushers that much. They're more reading and reacting in that defense and more focused on run defense. But, man, with these kind of numbers and with that performance in the Senior Bowl, Trev, I think this guy could be a top 10 pick now in the NFL draft. Now, would I personally take him in the top 10? Probably not, but I think there's plenty of teams, namely the Carolina Panthers at number 8 overall, that I would be eyeing right now for Shemar Stewart.
His numbers compared to Jadeveon Clowney, I mean, he's almost the exact same size. Clowney was 6'5" and a fourth, and Shemar Stewart's right around the same. He's right just above 6'5". The weight, Clowney came into the combine at 266 pounds. Shemar Stewart was 267. Shemar Stewart had, let me make sure I got this right here, so almost the same 10-yard split, a faster 40-yard dash, a higher vertical, a longer broad jump than Jadeveon Clowney did, which is pretty nuts. Now, Clowney obviously did not become the sack master that we thought he could be in the NFL, but he's still a really damn good player, and especially he became an elite run defender, especially when he was with the Houston Texans. That's sort of what I think Shemar Stewart can become. You look at the last 3 years from him, very low production when it comes to sacks. Sack and a half in each of the last 3 seasons. Now, the tackles for loss went up a little bit. I don't often just say, like, oh, guys are going to become better pros than they were in college. But I do think that Shemar Stewart is going to be a much more productive pro than he was. Is he ever going to be a guy who's, like 10 sacks, back-to-back years or something like that? No, maybe not. But a consistent presence for your defensive line and somebody that you're never going to worry about lining up on an NFL edge, I do think that that's going to be the case for him. So I like to call out there for Shemar Stewart. That was a question that we had in the chat. Hey, can you sell the Carolina Panthers at Shemar at number 8? Because that's what I had in my mock. That's what I would say to you is that they have a player already like Jadeveon Clowney on the team. Right. And if you put those two players, one on one side, one on the other, it does get really difficult to do things like double Derek Brown in the middle or help with any kind of blitzing that's going to be coming up the middle. So you've got guys that are just giving offensive tackles fits at all times. So again, maybe not a sack master type of a player, but it's not like there's a guaranteed sack master in this draft that you can just pick as a no-brainer. You're going to have to take a chance on some guys, and I think the NFL will on a player like Shemar Stewart. I'm going to go to the other side. What'd you say?
I was just going to say, Trevor, you look at the RAS scores for all time for defensive ends. 3 of the top 5 were number 1 overall picks in Trayvon Walker, Mario Williams, and Myles Garrett. And Shemar Stewart is number 1 now all time after that combine. So I'm not saying he's going to be the number 1 overall pick. I think Abdul Carter still has that top edge spot locked up. But clearly teams value athletic traits at edge defender. I think Shemar Stewart could be a top 10 pick now.
I'm going to go with Armand Membou as my first riser.
Love it.
When you look at the offensive tackles, I think these guys, the measurables were sort of like as we feared, right? They're not the biggest, they're not the longest type of offensive tackles. They're not these guys that, okay, it's just a plethora of guys who you could plug and play at offensive tackle in the NFL. Now, I think there's some that make sense, but we'll get to Will Campbell. I want to talk about Will Campbell in a little bit, but I want to focus here on Armand Membou, who ran an official 4.91 40-yard dash at 331 pounds. See that fast 10-yard split as well. Pretty good in the broad, pretty good in the vertical, especially given his size. He sounded like a championship-winning tennis player when he was running his 40. Just
look at that picture. There you go.
He even said afterwards, he was like, all right, we was talking to Stacey Dales on the field, and he was like, yeah, I probably made a little too much noise when I was running the 40, but hey, buddy, whatever gets you that 4.91, we love to see that. I think that athleticism shows up for him on tape. He's got that explosiveness, and he had those 33.5-inch arm, which is good to play at the tackle at the NFL level. I think he's going to be a really good player, whether it is guard or whether it is at tackle. But because of that athleticism that we saw there in the testing and when he was on the field, I'd certainly give him a shot at tackle. So to me, he's a big riser because the rest of the top offensive tackles, we didn't get to see Josh Simmons work out. Will Campbell measured in even smaller than we thought. I thought that Kelvin Banks was actually going to test a little bit better than he did. Josh Connerly kind of the same way. And so I believe that Armand Membou just sort of, because of his good day, vaults himself into that OT1 conversation. And if a team needs an offensive tackle in the top 10, I think he's the guy that they're going to gravitate towards.
Trevor, I love that. I saw a stat as well. There have been 4 offensive linemen since 2003 that are 315 plus pounds, run a sub 5 in the 40, and jump 30 inches in the vertical. You got Armand Membou, Will Campbell also from this year, and then you got Trent Williams and Tristan Wirfs. That is it. So I really do think Armand Membou is rising up boards right now. I mean, you have him going as the 5th overall pick in your latest mock draft, right?
Where did I have him? Yeah, I had him going 5th to the Jags. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, listen, he was awesome this past year too.
Because I think he can start, like, if you wanted to. I think the Jags, especially with having a new regime, they have a long-term approach here. I don't think they're just going to sit here and be like, hey, we need this the most. Like, if they're like, oh, okay, we need corner most, but if Travis Hunter's our top corner, we don't think that highly of Will Johnson or Jahdae Barron. Just listen to what James Gladstone talked about when he was at the Combine, building the wall in front of Trevor Lawrence, keeping him upright, keeping him healthy, building this thing for a long-term view. And he talked about potential and athletic intangibles, things like that. It makes me feel as though they're almost just going to draft Armand Membou and just be happy for it at some point, whether it's right away him playing the tackle, or they could keep Walker Little and Anton Harrison at the tackles, let Armand Membou play guard, and you can say to yourself, well, we're not going to draft a guard at number 5. Well, he might not be the guard for you forever, right? You sign Walker Little to that contract, but Gladstone didn't sign Walker Little to that contract. Trent Baalke did. The old regime did. So maybe they look at Walker and go, we don't know if he's our left tackle of the future type of a player. You draft Armand Membou, and maybe he starts at guard for you this year, and he kicks out the tackle the next. To me, it just feels like an investment where you got to look way more long-term on this, and I do think that he's on the board for the Jags at number 5. Who's your number 2 guy that you want to bring up here as a riser?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about Nick Emmanwori from South Carolina. Listen, he looks like a linebacker. He's 6'3", 220 pounds. But Trevor, he tested like a cornerback at the Combine. It was ridiculous, the athleticism that he showed out there. Ran a 40-yard dash in 4.38 seconds, placing him in the 96th percentile for all safeties. 43-inch vertical, 11 feet 6-inch broad jump, both in the 98th percentile for safeties as well. There's been a lot of talk in recent weeks about, maybe Malachi Starks is no longer the consensus number 1 safety in the draft. And with Nick Emmanwori putting up a performance like that in the Combine, and Starks we'll get to a little bit later, having more of a pedestrian performance at the Combine, I could see Nick Emmanwori potentially taking him over as the top safety in the draft.
I don't disagree with you. When you test like an absolute alien, it's hard to think the NFL won't take a chance on you very, very high in the draft. You talked about how those defensive ends, when they're pretty high in the relative athletic score, they go number 1 overall. I mean, for a safety and a guy who teams might view as a defensive chess piece. Now, I don't think that Nick Emmanwori would be for everybody. If you want him just in like a traditional 2-high safety set or something like that, there's not really a reason to overdraft him. But if you're a team like, like Baltimore or Seattle, for example, these teams that have sort of this roaming coverage defender like Mike McDonald has had with Kyle Hamilton before when he was in Baltimore, and sort of that still role that he has there, being able to play every safety spot, also in the slot, things like that, or what he's trying to implement there with the Seattle Seahawks, that to me makes sense as him being a little bit of this amoeba, middle of the field type of defender. But if you want him to be more of like a 2 safety set, I don't think you're getting the most out of that freakish athleticism that we saw there. The reason why I do agree with you and feel as though he could be that first safety off the board, and it feels like he's going to be, is even though I still believe in Malachi Starks, I love Malachi Starks, I understand, he didn't test super athletically. He tested fine. I want to make sure that everybody knows, like a 4.5 for a safety, totally fine. Like, it's not, that is nothing to scoff at or anything like that. And when he was out on the field, according to Next Gen Stats, he actually had the highest mile per hours recorded when he was going through all those DB drills for 4 of the different DB drills, which is actual football. Like, that's taking that athleticism and bringing it to the game of football. So I still love Malachi. I just wonder if NFL teams are leaning much more towards let's get the freak show of an athlete in the secondary and at the second level with Nicky Emmanwori. So I do think that he feels almost as if he's a top 25 lock at this point. And I can't say the same about Malachi. So I agree with sort of what you're saying about where he could go. I'm going to package the next two guys that we're talking about here because it's the two Iowa State guys. It's funny, when I started this, really digging into this draft class, August, September, something like that, everybody's like, hey, you got to check out Jaden Higgins. Jaden Higgins is a great wide receiver for Iowa State. We didn't know the kind of year that Iowa State was about to have, so I was like, all right. So I watched Jaden Higgins, wins with route running, wins with savviness, wins with high football IQ. He's got long arms. He's got the size to be able to play X at the NFL level, pretty good in contested catch situations. And then the more I watched and the longer the season went on, Dalton Washington of this very show told me, hey, I actually might like his teammate a little bit better for the NFL level. I was like, all right, let me go watch this guy. And then I watched Jalen Noel, and I said, wait a second, I kind of like him a little bit better. And then I just went back and forth the entire season long of which Iowa State guy I liked better for the NFL level. Well, the answer is simply yes. It's both of them. So the risers that I have are both Jalen Noel and Jaden Higgins. And the reason why is because we saw something a little bit different from those players. With Jaden Higgins, one, he measured in the way that you would want to, above 6'4", above 210 pounds. He had those long arms to him. Again, I felt as though he won as a receiver with high football IQ, with good route running, with contested catch ability, and then he ran a 4.47, and then he had great jumps, and then he now you're giving me a full athletic profile to where we have a do-it-all type of an X receiver for you at the NFL level. So is he a freak show athlete? No, but he basically everything that you're going to want Jaden Higgins to do at the NFL level, I feel like he could do. So he was a big stock up riser in that regard. And then Jalen Noel, I just didn't know how explosive this dude was going to be. You see it sometimes on the field when he's coming from the slot and he's using those two-way goes and he's creating that separation. But dude, over 11 feet in the broad, 41.5 inches in the vert, that's nuts. That's crazy athleticism. And then he's able to bring that stop and start ability, that body control to the on-field drills, just like we saw with him this year when he had the helmet and pads on. So those two guys, big risers in my opinion, because they separated themselves at exactly what either rounds out the receiving profile or solidifies where they won in college and how they will be able to still win in the NFL. So those two dudes, Jaden Higgins, Jalen Noel, those are two risers for me.
Trev, I love both of them. And another guy who was tasked with covering them in practice is another one of my risers, another Cyclone here in Darien Porter. It was a great week for Iowa State out there. Darien Porter, 6'3", 195 pounds, 33 1/8 inch arms, obviously one of the bigger corners in attendance. He still posted jaw-dropping numbers, a 4.3 40-yard dash, 98th percentile for all corners, 10 feet 11 inches in the broad jump, 10-yard split. We're both in the 90th percentile as well. His agility drills were really good, 6.71 seconds in the three cones, 88th percentile, 4.04 seconds in the short shuttle, that's in the 80th percentile. Obviously, excellent size, excellent athletic traits. I think he's one of the top press corners in this draft, and I think he pretty much locked up a day 2 slot in the draft now.
No, I agree with you completely. I don't know how the NFL looks at this guy and how successful Tariq Woolen has been, how successful Zion McCollum has been, and doesn't take a chance on those guys a little bit earlier. Because if I remember correctly, Tariq Woolen was a 5th-round pick, I believe. And I think Zion McCollum was also a 5th-round pick. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yes, I believe so, yeah.
Okay, you might have to fact check me on that as I keep talking. But those were like day 3 guys, and they have worked out at the NFL level. You take chances on these players who are long, have great length, but then that elite athleticism to them as well. Darien Porter, extensive track background. He was a multi-state title winner when he was in high school at the 400-meter dash, the 800-meter dash, the 200-meter, and then the 800 medley as well. So that shows up on his tape. Am I right? Was it 5th-round pick for both those guys?
They're both 5th-round picks, yeah.
I just feel as though the NFL at this time around is going to say, hey, 3rd round now. Somebody's going to take a chance on this guy in the 3rd round. So I agree with you. I do like Darien Porter quite a bit.
And he plays at obviously a Power 5 school, right? Rick Woolen played at UTSA, and then obviously Zion McCollum played at Sam Houston State, right? So these are two guys that you at least had competition concerns with them coming in, but Darien Porter played at the Big 12 level against some really talented receivers. Obviously, 2 of the receivers in practice, like I just mentioned before, and Jalen Noel and Jaden Higgins as well. So he's at least more battle-tested than those two are coming out. And they're both obviously very good players in the NFL now, too.
Um, let's see. Who's the next guy that we have here on my risers list? Oh, Darius Alexander, my boy. I'm actually kind of saving the best for last. I wondered if I was going to get to him. No slight to Darius Alexander. I already feel like it's just been having a fantastic draft season overall. You see some of the measurables right there. You love the long arms. You love the big hands. Then you get that 4.95 40-yard dash while weighing in at 305 pounds. So he's over 300 pounds, but he still gives you that decently quick 10-yard split, and we got that good 40 time as well. Pretty good three-cone drill there for him. 6'4", 305 pounds, like I mentioned. He was a big-time run stuffer this year for Toledo. He had an elite overall grade from us, but that mainly came from being an elite run defender this past season. When I watched his film, I didn't really see a ton of twitch, but then I watched him at the Senior Bowl, and in those instances where they go, hey, pin your ears back and get after the passer, he was able to do so at an incredibly high level. So that makes me think, okay, that mentality just as a pass rusher wasn't there. It wasn't what the defensive structure and the defensive coaches were asking him to do. And so a little bit like what we talked about with Keanu Benton last year, where Benton was this run stuffing, two gapping nose tackle at Wisconsin for most of his career. They let him be a little bit more of a pass rusher in his final season. We go, okay, you see a little bit there. It might be a little bit of juice there, but he's still just mainly a run stuffer. And then he goes to the Senior Bowl and he plays very well as a pass rusher. The Pittsburgh Steelers obviously liked him a good amount there in that draft. I believe he went in the second round. I know he's a day two guy, but I believe he was a second round dude there. I think Darius' stock is even a little bit higher than that because of the production that he's been able to have, the grades that he's been able to garner. So to me, he's a stock up guy because he was able to stand out in a defensive tackle class that some people were looking for like total freak shows on the defensive line. I don't think we saw that as much. But he was somebody who was able to sort of separate himself, and I think he gets into the first round because of it.
Outstanding year at Toledo, outstanding Senior Bowl performance as well, outstanding combine. You're right, Trevor. And this guy is just rising up right now. And I'm looking at it, Trev. Toledo has had 2 first-round picks in history. Dan Williams back in 1993, and then obviously Quinyon Mitchell last year. Is it possible that the Rockets go back-to-back in first-round picks this year, do you think?
I think it is. I think it is.
Look at action, baby.
Let's get the Toledo. Let's represent the Toledo Rockets here. By the way, I did confirm it. Yes, Keanu Benton went number 49 overall, second round. So that's sort of almost a floor of what I think for Darius Alexander now. I think that there's a chance that he can certainly sneak into the back end of round 1 as well. All right, you got 2 more guys you're bringing to the table. Who you got?
I got Quinshon Judkins from Ohio State, the running back.
For sure.
It is a loaded running back class, Trevor, and I thought he tested out amazingly. And another reason why he's a riser, I did not see this coming. I did not see a 4.48 40-yard dash for Quinshon Judkins, where really one of the concerns he had coming out of college was, does he have the top-end speed? Well, he has 86th percentile speed, which is very good enough for what his play style. 96th percentile 10-yard split at 1.51 seconds, 98th percentile broad jump at 11 feet, 92nd percentile vertical at 39 inches. I love Quinshon Judkins' tape, and the reason why maybe I had him as like RB4, RB5 was because, okay, as he has top end of an athlete as an Omarion Hampton or anyone else in this class, he proved that he is. And I think Quinshon Judkins made himself a lot of money. And like I said, what is a loaded running back class, he is still absolutely one of the top guys in it.
You talk about the 40-yard dash. The 11-foot broad.
Yeah.
Holy hell, this man was flying. The vert as well. What do you have in the vert? It was like 39
inches. 39 inches, yeah.
Nuts, man. At 221 pounds, it's crazy. And you know what? It felt like we saw a lot more of that at Ole Miss. And it felt like we didn't see nearly as much at Ohio State, especially to start the year. It was quiet for Quinshon Judkins. I think they were a lot better. Both he and Travion Henderson, they were much more impactful when it came to the college football playoff, which is good. That's what you want to play your best when the lights are brightest, if you will. But Judkins, to me, just that size and explosiveness combination, definitely a riser in my opinion, because it's a crowded running back room. And we'll get to who I think was a little bit of a faller for the opposite reasons. But yeah, big shout out to Quinshon Judkins there. The last guy that I'm going to shout out as a riser, my boy Donovan Ezeiruaku. This is one of my favorite players in this class. I hate mentioning him as a my guy because I never like talking about fringe first rounders or first round guys like my guys in this class because they're going in the first round, but he feels like I have to just talk about him as one of my dudes. This is a first round edge rusher, man. You see that, the long arms, the vert and the broad, okay, not super impressive, but good enough. But it was the 3-cone drill and the short shuttle there from him. You see on the screen 6.94 3-cone drill, so a sub 7 3-cone drill and a 4.19 short shuttle. That's in the 90th percentile for edge rushers. So this dude knows how to corner. He knows how to bend. He's got that flexibility to him. He measured in at over 6'2" and 248 pounds. So it's not, I was worried that Ezeiruaku was going to be close to like 240. And that would have told me that, man, you probably had to put some weight to just get 240 on the scale there when you measured it in the combine. But he said that his playing weight was right around 245, 248, something like that. So he showed up at his playing weight. He said that he could even gain a little bit more muscle, a little bit more mass to get up. And he said I could probably play comfortably at 255 if you wanted me to. Max, this is a first-round edge rusher. He's got the production to him. So many forced fumbles, so many passes defended, so many tackles for loss, 44 tackles for loss over the last 3 years, and over 30 sacks. So this is a dude who's got all sorts of production to him. He's one of the most productive edges that we have in this class, and then he tested very, very well. You got to see that when he was going through the drills too, the body control, knowing how to win, knowing how to have your posture, your structure, where your hands go, everything, man. I love Donovan Ezeiruaku. He should not get out of the first round. And to me, what we saw at the combine is him becoming a first-round lock. So that makes him a riser, in my opinion.
I love that. I mean, I had him as a first-team All-American for our PFF team this past year.
Let's go. Right side of history, Max.
Exactly. Exactly. He and Abdul Carter, I thought, were the two best edges in college football, both as a run defender and as pass rusher. Donovan Ezeiruaku was dominant this past year. I love the 34-inch arm length, right? Over 90th percentile for edge rushers. And Trevor, the reason why I loved Laiatu last year was the fact that he had a plan as a pass rusher, right? There's so many guys in this class thinking about it, James Pierce Jr., right? Just the plan's not all the way there yet. Ezeiruaku is ready-made as a pass rusher in the NFL with that pass rush plan. So not only does he have a high floor with his tape, but like you said, he tested out really well as well. He's got a high ceiling. I'm with you. I think he might have stamped himself as a first-round pick now.
Who's the last guy? Last riser before we, have a conversation on the other side of things, guys who weren't as impressive as we wanted them to be.
Yeah, a guy I really like in this class, but I didn't know if I was all in on the first round hype. I might be in on it now. Is Jihaad Campbell, the linebacker from Alabama.
If you're doing predictions, you better get.
He's in. He's going to the first.
Look at the hair. Look at the hair alone. I haven't seen this picture since right now.
That's not very aerodynamic, and he still ran a 4.52 in the 40-yard dash. So that's pretty impressive for Jihaad Campbell. He's a freak athlete, man. Honestly, 10-yard split was 93rd percentile, 1.53 seconds. 10-foot 7-inch broad jump, also 93rd percentile. A lot of people were talking about this linebacker class, and I remember preseason, everyone was like, "Oh, it's a bad linebacker class again." Honestly, I think it's a pretty good one. There's a lot of guys in this class that I really like, and Jihaad Campbell, I think now has pretty much cemented himself as a first-round pick at linebacker.
I agree. In my mock draft that I wrote this morning, I have him going 12 to the Dallas Cowboys, and that's with Genty off the board. I had Genty going 6 in my mock draft, so there wasn't an Ashton Genty to tempt them away from that. But I think people aren't talking enough about how desperate Dallas is at linebacker, because at this point in time, their starting LB1 next year is Maris Liufau, who I liked as a prospect, but I don't think the NFL viewed him as this full-time starter, let alone your LB1 in his second year as a pro, because DeMarvion Overshown's coming back from the knee injury. Eric Kendricks is a free agent. So to me, they need a big-time playmaker and somebody that can do a lot of different things for them at the linebacker level. So I think Jihaad Campbell's range starts with the Dallas Cowboys at number 12, and I wonder if the floor is Tampa at 19, to be honest with you. I wonder if that is his range right there, because I've heard that Tampa's a big fan of him, and that makes a lot of sense as well. Levante David, if he's coming back, it's probably for only one more year. They were so thin at linebacker, especially when it came to consistency and impact. So I think that feels like that's the range for Jihaad Campbell, who had a really good combine performance. So thanks for watching, everybody. Make sure you like and subscribe the video. And if you don't have a PFF Plus subscription, you can get one to see all the premium stats that we talked about here on the show, plus the expert betting and fantasy advice over at subscribe.pff.com. The description is also right below. So if you are not a PFF Plus subscriber, you can become one today.